and she is told at Hatfield while she is sitting reading under an oak tree. Given the fact that it's November and it's very, very cold, this looks very much like a stage scene.
For hundreds of years, Queen Elizabeth I has been one of the most studied rulers in English history. Her reign is well documented, but some parts of her life remained a tightly kept secret. Most intriguing were the questions about her health, her body, and her ability to have children. These were concerns raised during her lifetime and passed down by historians ever since. But now, AI has uncovered something hidden deep inside her DNA that was never meant to be known. What could this reveal about Elizabeth's life? Join us as we explore this shocking discovery and what it means for her legacy. The mystery of Elizabeth. The first's DNA. When modern AI-based claims began pointing to a hidden biological detail tied to Elizabeth, they built on a curiosity that had already been there for a long time. Elizabeth came to the throne in 1558 at the age of 25. England had just come through years of religious conflict and unstable rule. From the start, her council pressed her to marry and secure the line of succession. She did neither. Year after year passed, and the question did not go away. Why would a queen, aware of the risks of leaving no heir, refuse every serious match placed before her? Political strategy explains much of it, but not all. Her health and physical development became topics of concern at court. Records from the period show that Elizabeth suffered from repeated illnesses, including fevers and long periods of weakness. At times, she withdrew from public view without clear explanation. Tudor medicine was limited, and doctors rarely wrote in plain terms, especially when the patient was the monarch. That lack of clear records later led scholars to ask whether Elizabeth's body developed in a way that made childbearing impossible. In the late 20th century, some medical historians revisited these old accounts using modern medical language. Descriptions of Elizabeth from those who met her added more. As a young woman, observers often mentioned her tall height, narrow build, long fingers, and sharp features. These comments were not hostile, but they were detailed. As she grew older and her reign became more secure, her appearance became more controlled. Official portraits showed her face smooth and pale, her body stiff and covered, her clothing heavy with meaning. The real body disappeared behind paint and fabric. Elizabeth took direct control of how she was shown to the public. She approved which portraits could be copied and destroyed those she disliked. Artists were expected to follow a set pattern. This was not simply vanity. In a time when a queen's body stood in for the state itself, any sign of weakness could become a political threat. What people saw had to be steady, calm, and beyond question. In recent years, social media has added fuel to this old mystery. Videos and posts claim that AI systems have uncovered secret DNA details about Elizabeth. These stories spread quickly because they mix history with modern tech. But the problem is, there is no confirmed sample of Elizabeth I's DNA that has ever been tested. Her remains have not been examined, and no verified genetic study exists. As you know, what AI can do is analyze records, portraits, and family trees to suggest patterns. What it cannot do is pull real DNA from thin air. The line between suggestion and fact often gets blurred online. Still, the interest itself says, Elizabeth's body mattered because it shaped her rule. And the fact that people still search for answers today shows how much of her story remains just out of reach. In recent years, a number of researchers have started what they call the Tudor Genome Project, a name that appears in online discussions about Elizabeth's DNA. The project aims to bring together historians, geneticists, and AI engineers to explore how technology might reconstruct aspects of the past. The idea is not entirely new. Large-scale historical DNA projects have already shown what is possible. The most famous example comes from the study of King Richard III. In 2012, his skeleton was found under a parking lot in Leicester, and scientists were able to match his DNA with living relatives. That match confirmed his identity, solved long-standing questions about his death, and even revealed details about his physical traits, like scoliosis. Similar methods, the project claims, could someday be applied to Elizabeth. The goal with historical figures is that DNA can clarify family trees, confirm who was related to whom, and sometimes reveal medical traits that were hidden or misunderstood. It can check whether recorded histories match biological evidence. Unlike Richard III, her grave at Westminster Abbey has not been fully examined, and no one is sure if her remains could survive for proper testing. There is no verified record of her DNA being extracted, and no laboratory has confirmed that it could be, even if fragments existed in objects linked to her, like letters or gloves. The material is too degraded for full analysis. That makes the promise of a complete genome, for now, a theoretical exercise rather than a scientific fact. Some online sources suggest that AI engineers are filling this gap. They claim algorithms can reconstruct traits or biological details from portraits, clothing, and historical descriptions. These systems can take known patterns of inheritance, physical descriptions, and family histories, then predict traits that Elizabeth might have had. It is important to note that this is not real DNA sequencing. It is a computer model, a kind of educated guess built from data rather than laboratory evidence. The results can be fascinating, but they remain speculative. These programs are not just mapping traits, they are building entire possible identities from shadows of information. They claim to suggest what no human record could confirm, and in doing so, they blur the line between fact and reconstruction. For the first time, Elizabeth's biology is being discussed in ways that feel both modern and uncanny. The Tudor project, even if unverified, highlights a tension at the heart of historical science. On one side is hard evidence, bones, letters, contemporary accounts. On the other is inference, pictures, writings, AI predictions. When dealing with someone like Elizabeth I, whose life was already carefully managed, the question becomes more than academic. Every discovery or claim is filtered through centuries of image-making, myth, and caution. The AI might suggest possibilities, but only actual samples could ever confirm the truth. Even without verified DNA, the project shows how technology is changing how people think about the past. But if AI could fill the gaps in Elizabeth's biography, why can't her DNA? Challenges of studying Elizabeth's DNA. Elizabeth I died in 1603 and was buried in Westminster Abbey. For centuries, her grave has been treated with care, but over time, many factors have made her remains difficult to study. The tomb was open for repairs and ceremonies at different points, and her body was embalmed using methods common in the Tudor period. These processes, along with the natural decay of more than 400 years, make it very hard to recover DNA. Unless her bones or teeth could be found intact and protected, any attempt to get her genetic material is almost impossible. People imagine that hair or skin cells might have survived, giving scientists a way to study her genome. In reality, items from the 16th century almost always have DNA that is too degraded to work with. Some teams have turned to AI to try to fill gaps in the past. Computers can look at hundreds of pages of letters, reports, and descriptions, or scan dozens of portraits and spot patterns that humans might miss. They can connect family ties, compare physical traits mentioned across documents, or suggest which features might have been inherited. These programs can build charts or trees that show possible relationships. But it is important to be clear that AI cannot pull DNA from a letter or a glove. It can only work with the information that already exists. Some online sources mention programs like Argus AI or other systems designed to look at fragments of portraits or objects linked to Elizabeth. These models take visible traits like eye color, height, posture, facial shape, and compare them with what is known about her relatives and era. From this, they create a profile of likely genetic traits. The results are often presented as if they reveal something hidden about her DNA, but they do not. They are guesses based on probability, not evidence from a lab. True DNA analysis depends on actual material, bones, teeth, or tissue that still contains molecules of DNA. Lab methods such as PCR and sequencing can then read the genetic code. The results are validated through strict procedures and published in peer-reviewed journals. AI, on the other hand, uses data from portraits, descriptions, and other records to make predictions. It cannot prove what Elizabeth's genes contained or confirm any specific condition. Still, these AI analyses have captured attention. People are drawn to the idea that technology can unlock secrets long thought lost. Some presentations show reconstructed faces or suggested medical traits, and they can look convincing, but they remain simulations built from historical records, not biological evidence. The use of AI in this way raises interesting questions. Even without DNA, these models can highlight connections or patterns that were not obvious, such as similarities in facial structure across relatives or recurring health notes in records. They can point historians toward areas worth checking, or suggest that certain conditions might have been present. But until physical samples are tested, nothing these systems show can be treated as proof. This is why claims about Elizabeth's hidden DNA must be handled carefully. The computers can model, predict, and reconstruct possibilities, but the line between prediction and fact is still wide. What AI offers is a new lens on old material. It can suggest what might have been, but it cannot replace the material proof that would confirm or deny any specific genetic condition. One idea that came up was a condition now known as androgen insensitivity syndrome. People with this condition are born with male chromosomes, but their bodies do not respond to male hormones. As a result, they grow with a female outward appearance, but cannot bear children. To understand why this became part of the story around Elizabeth I, it helps to explain how the condition works in plain terms. Because those hormones cannot do their job, the body develops along a female path on the outside. The person grows up looking female, but without a uterus, and cannot have children. The condition is rare, and even today, it is usually found only through medical testing. In the 16th century, there was no way to describe this. Doctors did not know about hormones or chromosomes. They judged health by outward signs and crude ideas about balance in the body. If a person looked healthy and moved well, that was often enough. A queen who appeared strong, spoke clearly, and ruled firmly would not be seen as ill. If she could not bear children, the cause might never be named. It would remain a private concern, wrapped in silence. Those who later raised the AIS idea focused on a few points. Elizabeth never became pregnant. She never showed signs linked to childbirth. Her court spoke often about her health, yet no clear illness was recorded that explained her infertility, as she famously declared in 1559 in a speech to Parliament. "This shall be for me sufficient, that a marble stone shall declare that a queen, having reigned such a time, lived and died a virgin." Combined with her careful control of her image and her distance from marriage, this created a space where medical theories took hold long after her death. But historians have pushed back hard on this line of thinking. Most argue that it reads the past through modern lenses and ignores the world Elizabeth lived in. Tudor politics were built on marriage as a tool of state. For a queen, marriage meant sharing power, risking foreign control, and placing her rule at the mercy of a husband. Elizabeth saw what marriage had done to her sister Mary, whose union with Philip II of Spain caused unrest and fear across England. She did not forget it. Elizabeth also ruled at a time when female authority was fragile. A married queen could be seen as secondary to her husband. An unmarried queen could claim sole command. Over time, Elizabeth could have turned that choice into policy. She used marriage talks to keep allies close and rivals uncertain. She gained leverage without giving anything away. This was control. Cultural pressure mattered as well. Renaissance ideas about women placed them below men in law and custom. A queen had to work harder to appear steady, wise, and complete. Elizabeth shaped her public image to meet that challenge. She presented herself as whole, self-contained, and married to the realm. Her body became part of the state. In that setting, childlessness did not need a medical cause to make sense. The question is not only whether a condition like AIS was possible, but whether it is needed to explain anything at all. Many historians point out that Elizabeth lived into her late 60s, unusual for the time. She survived smallpox, political threats, and years of strain. There was no doubt that she was strong. They argue that reading her choices through a medical lens risks missing her skill as a ruler. It can turn strategy into weakness and planning into accident. That does not mean the idea disappears. It lingers because it fits neatly into modern habits of explanation. Biology feels solid. It promises answers. But history often resists that kind of closure. With no tested remains, no medical records, and no clear proof, AIS remains a theory built on gaps. What we know is that Elizabeth ruled for 44 years without marrying or naming an heir. She did so in full view of Europe, under pressure, and with steady control. Whether her body carried a secret or not, her rule did not depend on it. And that, more than any diagnosis, may explain why the question still refuses to rest. Keep watching, there's more. The Virgin Queen. As Elizabeth's reign settled into its middle years, her image stopped being reactive and became planned. She did not wait for others to define her. She shaped how she would be seen, again and again, across England and abroad. The title Virgin Queen did not appear by chance. It was built through art, ceremony, and repeated public signs that tied her body to the state and removed it from ordinary judgment. Elizabeth's court made careful use of symbols that spoke to people of the time. One of the most striking was the sieve, an object linked to the Roman figure Tuccia, a woman said to have proved her chastity by carrying water in a sieve without spilling it. When Elizabeth appeared with the sieve in portraits, the message was plain. She presented purity as strength and self-control as proof of worth. This was authority. The portraits approved by the crown carried this message far beyond the court. The sieve portrait, painted in the late 1570s, shows Elizabeth holding the object firmly, her gaze direct, her posture rigid. Behind her are scenes of empire and navigation, linking personal restraint with national ambition. The rainbow portrait, produced near the end of her reign, goes even further. Her dress is covered in eyes and ears, suggesting watchfulness. The rainbow carries the words, "No rainbow without the sun. Order flows from her alone." These images answered doubts. In a world ruled mostly by men, a queen had to prove she could stand alone. Elizabeth did this by placing herself above marriage, not outside politics. Court rituals reinforced the point. On accession day, nobles gathered to celebrate her rise to the throne. Poems, tilts, and speeches praised her as a figure of balance and care. Over time, these events turned loyalty into habit. Her progress tours through the countryside worked the same way. Elizabeth visited noble houses, heard petitions, and appeared before crowds. Each appearance reinforced the idea that her presence was enough. She didn't need a king beside her. She was the fixed point around which the court moved. These visits also gave her direct knowledge of her realm, cutting through layers of advisors. Remaining unmarried gave Elizabeth room to maneuver in foreign affairs. Marriage talks became tools rather than commitments. She allowed negotiations to continue with France, the Holy Roman Empire, and other powers without closing the door. Each proposal kept lines open. Each delay bought time. Rivals could not be sure where England stood, and allies stayed hopeful. This position helped her avoid binding treaties that could pull England into wars it could not afford. A marriage to a foreign prince would have brought obligations, armies, and influence into English policy. By staying single, Elizabeth kept decisions in her own hands. She could support one side quietly, pull back when needed, and shift course without breaking formal bonds. At home, her unmarried status eased tension between factions. No husband meant no rival, court, no foreign favorites, no clear line for succession that could split loyalties too early. Parliament pressed her often on marriage, but she met those demands with speeches that stressed duty and patience. She promised care, not heirs. Over time, the Virgin Queen became a framework for rule. Her body was presented as whole, complete, and closed to claim. Now, Elizabeth I was born on September 7, 1533, at Greenwich Palace. By law and record, she was the daughter of King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. At the time of her birth, Henry had already broken with Rome to marry Anne, and Elizabeth was declared a legitimate heir. That status did not last. 3 years later, Anne was executed, the marriage was annulled, and Elizabeth was pushed aside in the line of succession. Still, her parentage was never officially denied. Even after her fall from favor, Henry continued to refer to her as his child. The court kept close watch on Elizabeth's early life. She lived under supervision, moved between households, and received an education fit for a royal daughter. Tutors such as Roger Ascham praised her learning and discipline. None of the records from her youth raised doubts about who her father was. In a court where rumors spread fast and enemies watched closely, silence on such a matter carries weight. Questions about her paternity came up centuries after her death, as historians and writers looked back on the period with new tools and new habits of doubt. Henry VIII had many affairs. Anne Boleyn herself was accused, without proof, of infidelity. These facts made it easy for later writers to ask what could not safely be asked at the time. Modern DNA work has added fuel to such debates. The case of Richard III showed that old assumptions can be tested, but the comparison has limits. Richard's bones were found, tested, and matched. Elizabeth's have not been. There is no confirmed DNA sample from her, and no genetic data from Henry VIII that could be used for direct comparison. Without that material, claims about false paternity cannot move beyond theory. Some writers point to physical differences. They note that Elizabeth did not resemble Henry in build or temperament. Others suggest that Henry's later health problems raise questions about his ability to father children. These arguments depend on guesswork. Physical traits vary widely, even within families. Henry fathered 3 children who lived into adulthood, each with different features and health outcomes. Rumors also persist because the Tudors controlled their image so tightly. Henry VIII used law, religion, and force to shape his legacy. Anne Boleyn's fall was swift and brutal, and the charges against her were widely seen as tools of convenience. This history has led some to assume that official records hide as much as they reveal. There is also the pull of modern storytelling. Alternative histories attract attention. They promise hidden truths and overturn narratives. The Tudors, with their drama and violence, invite this kind of treatment more than most royal houses. In practical terms, Elizabeth ruled as Henry's daughter. Her claim to the throne rested on his blood, and it was accepted by Parliament and foreign powers. No rival ever produced proof to challenge that claim. In a time when such a weakness would have been seized upon, none appeared. Without tested remains or verified genetic data, the paternity question stays where it has long been. It remains a rumor shaped by distance, distrust, and modern curiosity. The record, thin as it sometimes is, still points in one direction. Elizabeth was Henry VIII's child, and history moved forward on that understanding. A similar case is when she died at Richmond Palace. She had been in declining health for several months, suffering from fatigue, fever, and general weakness. Contemporary accounts describe her as pale and quiet, often resting in her chambers. Physicians of the time treated her with the standard remedies of the day, including herbal poultices, purgatives, and gentle diet adjustments. There is no record from her attendants or court documents suggesting poisoning, and nothing in letters or diaries indicates foul play. But stories of assassination appeared later. Writers and dramatists imagined that someone might have wanted her removed, pointing to England's enemies and the political stakes of her long rule. These tales make for dramatic reading, but historians see them as speculation. Elizabeth was 69 years old, unusually old for the period. She had political crises and decades of stress. Chronic illness and age provide a far simpler explanation than murder. The appeal of assassination stories lies partly in human fascination with secrets. A queen who ruled tightly, controlled her image, and left no public signs of failing health invites rumor. When a powerful person dies, Storytellers often fill the silence with intrigue, yet no contemporary evidence supports any claim of foul play. For other Tudors, forensic methods have provided clarity. Some modern projects use AI or modeling to simulate scenarios, suggesting how poison might act or how symptoms could develop. These exercises can produce striking images, but they are not evidence. They rely on assumptions and cannot account for her health, environment, or the medical care she received. They remain thought experiments rather than proof. The facts point to a different story. Elizabeth's death followed months of declining health and the limits of medical knowledge in the early 1600s. Physicians treated her within the bounds of what they understood. The court recorded her final days without hinting at violence or conspiracy. Any tale of assassination comes from later imagination, not contemporary sources. With her passing, the Tudor line ended with her, leaving the crown to James VI of Scotland. The story of her death, stripped of rumor, reflects the same careful record-keeping and evidence-based judgment that runs through her life. Without tested remains or scientific analysis, there is no reason to see murder where history shows decline and age. The Queen passed quietly, and the realm moved on, carrying forward the legacy she had shaped. During her time, she strengthened the Protestant Church, making it a lasting institution in England. In 1588, the English fleet defeated the Spanish Armada, securing national security and boosting her reputation across Europe. She also oversaw a period of growth in arts and exploration. Writers like Shakespeare and Marlowe thrived, and English navigators expanded trade and settlements abroad. These achievements helped England emerge as a major power by the end of her reign. Her life, however, was more than events and victories. Elizabeth cultivated an image that balanced authority, control, and symbolism. She carefully shaped how people saw her, using portraits, ceremony, and public appearances to signal wisdom, virtue, and strength. She governed alone, dealing with a male-dominated court and foreign diplomacy without a husband, while keeping her court loyal and her nation stable. This skill, planning, and image-making leaves a complex legacy. Historians see a ruler who combined intelligence with strategy, who used every tool available to secure her position, and who created myths that still surround her today. What do you think? Could modern AI or genetic research ever uncover secrets about Elizabeth I that history alone cannot tell? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.